Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Anna Blackwell, who is a 24-year-old adventurer who has a massive passion for the great outdoors and pushing her limits. She has been trekking across the wilderness of Arctic Sweden, as well as walking 500 and 1,000 miles across France and Spain along ancient pilgrimage routes. Enjoy the podcast. Anna, your website is Anna Blackwell Adventurer, the goings on of an adventurer. So tell everybody a little bit more about you.
Okay, well, I'm 24. I finished university about a year and a half ago. For sort of 4 or 5 years now, I've been going off on pretty big adventures. What have I done? So I've walked 500 miles across Spain along the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage route. I then, the following year, went and walked 1,000 miles along similar routes across France and Spain. Wanted to challenge myself a bit more. The year after that, to challenge myself even further, I went and spent 5 weeks trekking across the wilderness of Arctic Sweden by myself. And this year I've been on a couple of shorter trips. I went and climbed Mount Toubkal in Morocco in North Africa. And I went to Arctic Norway for 10 days, an adventure which went very, very wrong, but it was still fantastic.
Amazing. You've done so many great challenges. I can't wait to talk about all the successful ones and the ones which you say have gone slightly wrong. But let's just find out, were you adventurous as a child? Were you growing up in the outdoors? Were you sporty?
I definitely wasn't very sporty. I'm one of those really kind of uncoordinated people. Never did very well with school sports, but I was quite outdoorsy. I did a lot of horse riding from the age of about 8. So I used to spend a lot of time outside with horses, mucking around in the fields, out for kind of days on end. We used to do a lot of family holidays in Devon, Cornwall, Wales every time of year. So I spent plenty of time out in the hills in torrential rain. And I did a lot of camping with my dad, actually. He'd take me away for a weekend every year. We'd often go to the New Forest and go camping, and I'd go horse riding for a couple of hours and he'd sit in a cafe getting bored. So I did a lot of that sort of outdoorsy stuff in quite a kind of family oriented way. And it's quite funny actually, I did D of E, Duke of Edinburgh, when I was at school, when I was probably 15, and I absolutely hated it. And I got to the end of the weekend and I swore I would never, ever go in a tent again. I would never go off walking for a couple of days like that. It was just, that was my idea of hell. And then obviously sort of 8-9 years later, I spent 5 weeks in a tent, walking every day by myself. So I definitely couldn't have predicted that this would be the sort of path that I would be following.
Why was it hell? What didn't you like about it? Or what were your memories from that trip?
Oh, I think I was with a group of some of my best friends from school, and the practice weekend went really well. We had great weather. It was good fun. It was all relaxed. The real proper weekend, we managed to get lost a lot. One of my friends had a bit of an upset tummy, and we ended up arguing quite a lot. And I think it was one of those situations where I think we were in a group of 6 girls, kind of spirits running a bit high. We kind of clashed a bit, and I think that was the main side of it. And I probably got blisters as well, or some poor excuse like that.
No, I always think it's fascinating, especially when they say that, they hate or weren't that involved in like school sports or were uncoordinated and hated Duke of Edinburgh, and then suddenly you're out there doing all of these incredible adventures. So what sort of changed for you sort of during that time period?
I think I came to this sort of side of adventure in the outdoors myself, as opposed to being told, oh, you have to go and do this sport and things like that. I'm the sort of person where if someone tells me that I should be doing something, I kind of like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to do that then. Equally, if someone says, well, you shouldn't do that or you can't do that, I'm like, okay, well, fine, I'm going to have to do it now. So I think I had a couple of big life changes. I went to uni my first attempt didn't quite work out. I dropped out of uni after a couple of months, and then that led to me taking a gap year. And it was when I was on my gap year that I sort of really travelled solo for the first time. And I spent a couple of months in Central America with a sort of a gap year charity organisation. And part of that was going off on a trek for a couple of weeks. And it was flipping hard work. It was one of the hardest things I'd done, because I didn't have the experience, the physical experience, but also the emotional experience to deal with it. So that was all very full on. But I got to the end of it, and I just distinctly remember we spent the final 3 days trekking along the beach in Costa Rica, which was absolutely sublime. Really hard work in sand, as you know. But we got to the end of it, and everyone else in the group was crying from like this sheer relief of the ordeal being over. And I was sat there crying because I was so heartbroken that it was done, it was complete. And the next day I wasn't going to be putting my boots back on and my rucksack back on. And it was kind of that moment where I was like, yeah, I quite enjoyed this actually. I quite like living out of a rucksack and being somewhere different every day. And that kind of triggered a couple of other adventures. And I then later on in my gap year spent a couple of months backpacking around Italy by myself. I was there for I think just over 3 months, which was an adventure of a different kind to what I've gone on to do, but it was still a big kind of learning curve, spending that much time by myself in sort of new cultures and things like that. And that sort of broadened my horizons and what I thought I could go and do. And I did then go back to uni. I reapplied, went somewhere I was better suited, and had a fantastic 4 years. Changed things around a little bit as well. I started off doing one course and stopped that after a year and changed to another course. Just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, really. And incidentally, I've not gone on to do anything remotely related to what I did at uni, but it was still it provided a great opportunity to go off and do things during the holidays, which is how I have been so lucky to go off and spend sort of up to 3 months on adventures.
I mean, I was just going to ask you actually, starting at uni, not working out, deciding to take a gap year, take some time out, you're going on these treks, you're doing a lot of solo traveling. I was going to ask, did that actually change when you came back, what you wanted to study at university, and what did you end up studying?
So it actually didn't change what I thought I wanted to study, because I, straight out of finishing my A-levels, I went to uni in London. I'm very young for the year. My birthday is at the end of August, so I had literally just turned 18. Moved to London to study ancient history. It was one of my favourite subjects at GCSE and A-level. In hindsight, a lot of that was my teacher. He was absolutely fantastic. And everyone in my group, we had a really small group, and everyone went on to do that. So that felt like the natural step. So spent 3 months in London. Just, it wasn't right. I didn't know whether it was the subject or the city. I thought the city. So dropped out, took the gap year, went to Exeter, down in the absolutely fantastic county of Devon, and did a year of ancient history again, because I thought that the subject was fine. It wasn't. So changed to psychology, which I was a lot better suited to. The kind of much more sciencey subject was much, much better for me. And yes, I did 3 years of that in Exeter, which is just probably one of my favourite cities in the UK, and I really, really miss it. I'm actually heading down to Devon this weekend, and I'm so excited.
Oh, but also it did give you the opportunity, like you said, to have these amazing long holidays, like 3 months off, to go on these incredible adventures. How do you decide what you want to go and do? Where do the ideas come from?
It's strange. I'm not entirely sure how I've ended up doing the things that I have done. When I walked 500 miles in 2014, I think I was meant to do that with my dad, actually. He had been working with some Spanish people at the time who had told him about this fantastic 500-mile walk across the north of Spain. And my dad and I had done quite a lot of walking together. So we thought, that would be a great thing to do when I graduate from uni. But I then got impatient. When I have an idea of something I want to do, I don't like sitting on it. I just can't. So I ended up going and doing that without him, and I'm not sure he's actually forgiven me for that yet, even though it's years later. It was meant to be our thing, but he's gone off and done things with my mum, so it's all right. But that was how I came on to do that. And I kind of watched a film about it and thought, that looks epic. Um, and it was while I was walking 500 miles that I met a Dutch guy who had started 500 miles earlier than I had done, so 500 miles into France. So he was walking 1,000 miles, and we kind of all just looked up to him because he was this experienced. He was quite quiet and just seemed so wise and knowledgeable. And it was like, wow, he's already walked 500 miles. Like, he's incredible. And I got to the end, and after walking for 5 weeks, I just thought that was not long enough. That wasn't enough of a challenge. And so there was just always this thought in the back of my mind, like, what am I going to do? And it got to Christmas time, and all of my friends were applying for summer internships and things like that, trying to get professional experience. And I was just sat there like, oh God, that's so boring. I don't want to go and spend my summer in an office photocopying and making coffee. That just, that's silly. I spent enough time inside during term. And so I kind of remembered Marco and thought, hey, maybe I should go and do that. And went and bought a big map of France and Spain and put it up my wall and marked out the route, and just kind of took a step back and looked at it, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I remember phoning my mum and saying, oh, I think I'm going to walk 1,000 miles this summer. And she was like, oh, right, don't you think you should kind of go and get some work experience or something? And I was just like, no, this is what I've got to do. And I did it. And Sweden, Arctic Sweden last year, I'm part Swedish. My mum's half Swedish. So I'm quarter Swedish. I've been there every year since I was 13 months old. And I've always been to the same part of Sweden where my gran lived, on the west coast. And I always knew that I wanted to go off and explore more of Sweden, spend like a bigger chunk of time there. And then I came across this trek. It's called the Kungsleden. And it's about 285 miles long. I think it's probably on sort of National Geographic or something like that. And I just thought, well, this is just combining everything that I want out of my next expedition. It was Sweden. It was really good distance. It was out in the wilderness. So there was there wasn't the option of a hot shower every day and meals cooked for me. It was going to be really remote and physically and emotionally challenging, which is what I wanted.
I always just want to go back to that first initial, that 500 miles in terms of like your planning and your preparation. I mean, you said you were going to do it with your dad initially. Had you planned much stuff with him, or did you take on the majority of the planning yourself?
I actually don't think I really did that much planning. I kind of just, it was a slightly haphazard, just sort of threw myself into it. I'd read the guidebook quite a bit, but it's a really, really well-established route. Like, thousands of people do it every summer, and there are hostels that you stay in every day, and a lot of them you can't even book. It's kind of a first come, first served basis, or they'll put mattresses on the floor and things like that. So I knew that there were going to be lots of people around. It was really well waymarked. I wouldn't have to worry about trying to get accommodation and food and things. It was going to be quite easy. So I often say to people, if they say like, oh, I think I want to go on a big long walk or something, or my first adventure, I recommend this one, because it's a really good sort of entry point, because you can do sections of it, or you can do the full thing depending on how much time you have. But it's so well catered for, and sort of there's so many provisions along the way to make it easier. And the people who do it are so supportive and encouraging, and just want to help you as much as they can and sort of share advice and their experiences and things. So I didn't really do any planning. I probably spent quite a lot of time looking at things that I should pack, but still started off with probably 20 kilos, which a lot of that got shedded on the first day. My dad and my mum came and walked the first couple of hours with me to kind of send me on my way. And I think I had like 3 books. I'm pretty sure I had the Lord of the Rings trilogy in my bag, which is just not a sensible idea for a long distance walk. Not sure what I was thinking. They got ditched, as well as quite a lot of other stuff that I did not need. So I got it down to sort of 8 or 9 kilos actually, which was a lot more manageable because I didn't need all the stuff that I had. Bit daft. I was just in mainland Europe, passing through towns and cities every day. So, if you do need anything, you can just buy it, really, if it comes to that.
What did you like most about the lifestyle of being out there walking every day, going from point A to point B and, covering this huge distance?
Probably the sunrises. That was probably the absolute highlight, because I was walking in Spain in August. So it would get really hot, and we would get up at sort of literally 4:30 in the morning, and start walking before sunrise. And I say I made friends with 3 Americans on the second day, and they were all about my age actually. I think I was 19 or 20, and they were early 20s, because a lot of people are kind of 30s to 50s. So we were quite a lot younger than everyone, but made friends with them on my second day and did the whole thing with them. And so we'd get up before sunrise every day and start walking, which meant I got to see the sunrise pretty much every day for 5 weeks. And that's a fairly unique experience. You don't often get that. You might see the sunrise if you're kind of commuting into work early in the morning or something, but it's not the same when you're sitting on the bus or the train or in your car as when you're outside walking and you feel the effect of like that, the first rays of sun sort of hitting you and kind of warming you up a bit, and then immediately thinking, oh god, today's going to be a really hot day. So that was definitely the number one highlight. Very close after that was the people. I made friends with people who I'm still in touch with now. We've got a WhatsApp group, and it was such a tight-knit community of people from all different walks of life and different countries, and you come together, and there are no boundaries or anything like that, and no judgment or preconceptions and things like that. So it's just a really communal, shared experience.
Yeah. What was it like, so the very last day, the final few miles, coming to the end of that journey? What do you remember from that time?
Oh, it was quite sad actually, because the last 5 days are the busiest, because in order to get the kind of certificate saying you've done this pilgrimage, you only have to walk the last 100 kilometers. So a lot of people get shipped in just to do that, and you get quite big tourist groups actually. So we had about 4 weeks of seeing just one group of people every day, and it being reasonably quiet. And then suddenly there was this really big change, and there were so many people. Like you would look ahead and there would just be a constant stream of people, and the same behind. So it kind of felt like there was a sudden change in what it was about. Kind of the people that came in for that section, it was more of a kind of touristy box to tick almost, whereas the people who start at the beginning, it's more of a for a lot of people it's kind of more of a spiritual journey. So there was that change, and then it was also knowing that this fantastic walk, this experience, was coming to an end. So I remember we all kind of got quite a lot quieter towards the end, because we knew it was finishing, and I was trying not to, but I was already starting to get a bit sentimental for the experience that I'd had up to that stage, which is something that I really try not to do. Having done it then, I kind of was living in the past a little bit and thinking like, this has been so amazing, before it had even finished. But actually on the last day, it sounds bad to say, but it was all a bit underwhelming. When you finish at the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela, and it's a huge cathedral, and it was covered in scaffolding, so we couldn't actually see it. And I've got, because I had my GoPro, and I made a film of it, a very, very rookie film. But I sort of filmed us walking onto the square right at the end, and we're all kind of just like, oh, cool. Okay, we're done then. Okay, well, let's give each other a hug. Okay, now what? So it was all, I think it just, you don't fully process it for a little bit, and it was all a bit surreal. Yeah, it's a bit strange, a bit of a strange ending, that one. The others haven't been quite so strange. But I think because that was the first really big one, we weren't quite sure, how we were meant to feel.
Yeah. After you finished it, did you feel as though you'd been properly challenged, or were you already thinking, do you know what, I think I can go further? Or how long did it take to really sort of process and to evaluate what you've been through?
I finished and knew that it had been challenging at first, like the first couple of days probably, getting used to walking all day, carrying a rucksack, being outside a lot, sleeping in different places. But once you kind of get used to that, it all becomes very natural. So once that adjustment had taken place, it was, because it just felt so normal, it actually wasn't that challenging. And so I think that was one of the reasons why at the end it was kind of like, oh, well, it's done. And I was like, well, okay, that wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. So I think very quickly I was thinking, okay, so what am I going to do next? Because I knew that I had loved the experience from the day one. Well, maybe from evening one, because I cried on the first day when my dad said bye. I had that moment, as a lot of adventurers will be familiar with. First day, and you set off and you're like, oh God, what am I doing? Why did I think this was a good idea? But once I got over that, I did love it. And I think part of me was like, oh, I need to find something that isn't so enjoyable, which to kind of make it more of a challenge. But I've gone on and done 2 really big challenges since then, and I've really loved both of those, even in the really challenging moments. So I think I quite enjoy being a bit uncomfortable. So I'm learning about myself.
I always think you have to, when you do these sort of big, long challenges. You always got to get used to that. I don't want to say suffering, but suffering. So what I really like about sort of your journey is like how it sort of evolved from the 500 miles, and next you decide to do 1,000 miles. So tell us a little bit more about that and how you decided and what you were going to do.
Yeah, so as I said, I met this Dutch guy who had done it, and I had about a 3-month summer holiday. I think it was before my final year of uni, and I wasn't sure when I was next going to have the opportunity to go off and do something for that amount of time, because there is always so much pressure on graduates and sort of just people in their early 20s to get a job and get on the career track. And I kind of, at that stage, I still thought that was where I was heading. So I had this 3.5-month expanse of time coming up, and I didn't know when I was next going to have it. So I knew I wanted to fill it as much as I could. And yeah, just landed on this 1,000-mile walk, and it all just felt so right, because I'd loved the 500 miles, and I didn't feel I was quite ready to go off and do something that didn't have the support in place. Because the one that I did, so it was 500 miles across France and then 500 miles across Spain along the north coast of Spain, finishing in Santiago de Compostela again. Although I then did do a sort of 4-day extension on the end because I wasn't finished. And yeah, it's a really well supported route. The bit through France slightly less so, which introduced a bit more of a challenge. There are much longer stretches between accommodation options, and it's a much less walked route. So I would only pass, maybe 1 or 2 people a day kind of out on the path, and then it would be through towns and things. It would just be either locals or tourists. And a lot of people didn't even know what I was doing. And when I said that I was walking to Santiago or Saint-Jacques in French, they'd be like, where? And I have to sort of get my books out and show them on the map, and they'd be like, what are you doing? Why are you possibly doing that? So it's just quite funny that it's a much less known walk, this pilgrimage. They really don't know about it, but I quite liked that. I liked that I was this kind of slightly strange person walking along, and because I was that sort of oddity, people sort of took more time to support me. And I think also the fact that I was a young girl alone, a lot of people say, oh, should you really do these things as a girl, as a young girl? And I'm like, well, actually it does work in my favor quite a lot. I get given a lot of free food, And food really is the way to my heart as well. So people would stop me like, oh, can we give you anything if we drive you somewhere? Or didn't quite get that I was, walking the whole way. And I'm like, no, I can't accept a lift. And they're like, well, can we buy you lunch? And I'm like, I mean, okay. And they sort of scurry off and come back with a nice baguette and a bit of cheese, and they'd kind of help find water and things like that. So that was a really, really lovely experience. You don't get that so much on the Spanish section, but the French bit was absolutely beautiful as well. And I made my parents go and do the first 10 days of it the following year, and I've now got them hooked on adventure as well, actually.
Did you enjoy walking by yourself and having that alone time, or did you find it lonely?
It varied. When I was in the kind of more rural parts, I loved it, and I didn't feel the loneliness so much because I was distracted by the beauty of the scenery around me and the landscape. Walking through the cities and the busier towns and some touristy places, like I walked through San Sebastian, Bilbao, Santander, places like that, when you're surrounded by people and surrounded by young people kind of sitting outside coffee shops and bars, that's when I did start to feel the loneliness, because it's much more in your face and it's so much more apparent that you are by yourself. But then it didn't matter too much, because by that stage there were a lot more walkers and a lot more people doing this pilgrimage route. So I could kind of make friends with them and socialize with them, and it was totally acceptable to just go up to someone and be like, hey, how's it going? Do you want to, cook dinner together? And that was just like the done thing. It was like, yeah, cool, keeps costs down. So I didn't really feel the loneliness too much. I've got really used to being by myself and being happy in myself as well. That 1,000-mile trip, like, there were harder sections, but it was, like, looking back, it's quite interesting that the times that I really struggled and really questioned why I was doing it would be when I was walking through like suburbs and industrial estates and along the side of motorways and things like that. And I would find myself thinking like, oh my God, I didn't come here to walk on tarmac next to cars. Like, this isn't much fun, and it's not fun, but it was part of it. And I became quite reliant on audiobooks. Actually, I listened to Black Beauty and Pride and Prejudice quite a few times because they were the only two I had. But they really helped to kind of remove me from the situation, which was what I needed then. But on my trek last year in Arctic Sweden, I didn't even take headphones because I didn't want that option. I wanted to really be present in every moment, and to, if I was feeling lonely, I wanted to process that and get myself through it. Or if I was struggling, I didn't want the distraction of being able to listen to something. I wanted to be, motivating myself, and it worked out quite well.
No, I think that's really interesting, like processing the loneliness and just trying to figure that out. Well, when you talked about the harder sections, and I know you talked about the sections that maybe you didn't enjoy as much, walking on concrete, but the harder sections which were maybe physically more challenging, how did you get yourself through those sections?
Quite often I would just look down at my feet. I wouldn't look because there were quite a few bits where you'd have really long, steep climbs. And in the middle, I spent a couple of days in the Pyrenees. Towards the end, I was in the Picos de Europa in the north of Spain. And so there were physically, really, really physically challenging sections. But I would, just look down at my feet, try not to focus on how far away the end goal was, and just like break it up into sections. And I would look ahead and see there was a rock and be like, right, okay, when I get to that rock or that bend in the path, I will take a couple of minutes break. I'll have some water, have a look at the view, just, take it easy. And because I was doing it by myself and setting my own kind of goals for the end of the day, my own distances, there was never a pressure to be matching someone else's pace, which meant that I could just go at my own speed. And that is really, really valuable when you're doing a long distance thing, is being able to really stick to your own pace and know what you're capable of that day. And like some days I would set off in the morning and be like, oh God, I'm just so tired. And on those days I would just take it easy and, through Spain in particular. I was passing a lot of cafes, and I would stop and have about 3 breakfasts and then lunch and then a couple of coffees in the afternoon as well. And also a lot of ice cream, which really got me through. But it was important to be able to recognize what I felt up to and not pushing myself too far, because that is then when it's not fun. And yeah, just gotta know yourself and know your body. But ultimately, I always knew on those the really tough bits and the challenging climbs, I knew that when I got to the top, there was pretty much guaranteed to be a fantastic view. And I absolutely love big panoramic views. That's one of my favorite things. Even if the weather's rubbish, if I just even feel like there's a panoramic view around me, I'm fine. And so, oh God, there's like a Miley Cyrus quote for one of her songs, but it's like, the climb is hard, but the view is great, or something like that, which is just I can't believe I've actually just referenced Miley Cyrus, but it's one of those things that is just stuck in your head when you're going up, and it's like, the view is going to be great. It's going to be worth it.
And generally it always is. It is always amazing what's around the corner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of the previous 2 routes, you know, you managed to like stop off for coffee, stop off for ice cream. There's lots of people there. You can occasionally be walking through town, so it almost sounds quite sociable for the majority of it. And that,
it was
on your next challenge though, you decide to really get back out into the wilderness and to what I think is actually a very, very remote area. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I having done something that was so sociable, as you say, and it was a pretty luxury way of trekking, having somewhere to stay every night, having a hot shower, an actual bed inside, cooked meals, or a kitchen to cook food. I knew that I wanted to do something that was going to challenge me more. So there are a couple of key things that I knew I could change. One of those was getting away from all of those cafes and all of those towns and things like that, and removing that luxury of being able to just, have food and coffee on tap, and taking myself away from the people as well. That was a really big thing, because when the conversation that you have with people can really motivate you, but they can also really bring you down. And I wanted to see what I was like by myself for a really extended period of time. So where I trekked in Sweden is one of the largest wilderness areas in Europe. I think it's actually the kind of network of national parks up there combined is the largest wilderness area in Europe, and it's got one of the largest protected areas. So once I started trekking, it was 7 days until I saw a road. There wasn't like any buildings or anything like that. It was literally just a road. And then it was another full week before I saw another road. And I had a stretch of 6 days followed by 5 days where I didn't see a single person, just loads and loads of reindeer. So it was completely remote and isolated, but not lonely. I weirdly didn't feel lonely at all while I was doing it. Even less lonely than when I was doing the 1,000 miles, which is interesting because there was literally no one around. But it kind of worked. It worked out because it wasn't so obvious that I was alone, because there weren't people, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
slightly confusing concept.
No, I get it. And just always going back to that, the taking this time out to almost process. And you said that you didn't take along any headphones, so it was a lot of thinking time. What were you thinking about, or what did you want to use that time to think about? Did you set yourself any questions at the beginning, or anything that you wanted to particularly mull over?
It's interesting. I didn't so much. On my previous trips, I've kind of done more of the kind of the deep thinking, the deep questions, kind of what values I want to really embody in my life, and my goals, and the sort of life I want to lead, and the person I want to be, and things like that. So by the time I came to do this 5 weeks in the wilderness, I kind of knew where I was going with life, what I wanted to achieve, the things that are important to me, and I already felt quite kind of happy in the person that I'd become. So it was more of just I wanted to do something that was going to challenge me. I was interested to see how I would react in the kind of that extreme terrain, and how my emotions would vary as well, and whether I would find it harder being alone and without distractions and things like that. Like, I only had a Kindle with me for entertainment. Well, Kindle, camera, journal. Turns out that's all I really need to keep myself entertained. And actually, I didn't struggle as much as I thought I would. Really struggling. I can't find what's like my breaking point yet. But I thought I would find it really hard. I thought having to put a tent up every day and cook my dinner every day after trekking for sort of 8 hours in pretty cold temperatures as well. I really thought it was going to be more of a challenge, but I loved being in a tent, and I loved being so self-sufficient and being able to choose where I slept every night down to the square foot, and being able to sit in my tent and watch the sunset, and in the morning unzip it and watch the sunrise and eat my porridge, my cold lumpy porridge, and drink my instant coffee watching the sunrise over mountains or lakes or in forests. And it was so invigorating. And yeah, so again, wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. Which you can kind of tell. I sent messages to my parents every day because I had just a sort of GPS tracker, and I would send them literally just a one-line message every day. And looking back at them, it pretty much was always great day in tent, and there was never a tough day, because by the time the day was over, even if it had been tough, and even if the weather had been horrendous, and I had been physically challenged, it was always like, just kind of my emotions always stayed. I was always really positive about it, and I don't know how I managed that, because I had about 2 weeks of pretty bad weather, and my walking boots had almost entirely disintegrated by this stage. They were full of holes and splits, and as a consequence, I had wet feet for 10 days or 2 weeks. And it got to the stage where I genuinely thought I was going to get trench foot or something, which I didn't, luckily. But it was like things like that. If I kind of get wet feet when I go out for a day walk, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. This is gross. I can't wait to get home and put some dry socks on. But because I didn't have the option of dry socks, it's like that was life, and I just accepted it and was like, oh, wet feet it is then. And it didn't get me down. I think just accepting things that you can't change, because you really can't change stuff when you're out that remote. And I realized that very quickly.
Do you know what, that is so powerful. I mean, I'm just thinking back to one of my most miserable thing in the morning is when you've got wet socks and wet shoes and it's raining and you've got to put them on. And I mean, if you timed it, it's probably like the first 2 or 3 minutes, it's just horrendous. And then it is what it is.
Yeah. And then your feet warm up and you don't even realize that they're wet anymore. And it's kind of the same with blisters as well, actually. I was lucky in Sweden that I didn't get any blisters at all. And I think I probably only got 2 or 3 when I was doing the 1,000 miles. But I remember when I was walking 500 miles, I got really bad blisters. And when you're taking a break, it was always like, oh God, it's going to be agony. And it's the first couple of steps, you're like, oh God, and wincing, and it's trying to walk a little bit differently to avoid putting pressure on those spots. But then after maybe 3 or 4 steps, it's like, oh, you don't even notice them anymore. And it is, you kind of, these things, it's painful to start with, and then you kind of forget about it because there's more going on.
What adventures are on your bucket list, or what would you like to go out and do? Money, no object. You can go anywhere in the world, do any challenge, any adventure. What would it be?
Oh, do you know what? I've been asked this question quite recently. I get asked this a lot, actually, like, what are you doing next? And I don't know. There are so many places I would love to go. Like Central Asia looks fascinating. South America as well just looks so awesome. There are so many places I'd love to go, but I want to create adventures tailored to me in each of those places. I don't get so much out of sort of backpacking and traveling like that anymore, having traveled in such a unique way, really. I know that I need to do something different in seeing places. Don't get me wrong, I went to Bali for 2 weeks last year with my best friend, and it was absolutely great. We spent a lot of time just chilling out on beaches. drinking cocktails. So that was very much a holiday. But kind of in terms of bigger trips, I know that I want to do things that sort of challenge me and push me and give me an opportunity to see a place in a different way. I'm actually have my next adventure lined up, which is very exciting and slightly terrifying. We're still in the very, very early stages of planning it, but April next year, so April 2018, if all goes to plan, I will be kayaking from England to the Black Sea, so right across Europe, and it's almost 3,000 kilometers. It will take about 3.5 months. And yeah, so that's the next adventure, hopefully.
That sounds epic. Can you actually make it through all the waterways?
Yeah, we've I'm doing it with another girl called Kate. She's absolutely lovely. We have spent quite a lot of time poring over maps and books and online journals and things like that about all the different waterways through Europe, and you can, which is quite a crazy thought actually. Kind of there's lots of different canals and rivers through France, and then kind of you get into Germany and you pick up the Danube in Germany, and then follow the whole length of the Danube for over half of it. So a lot of time on one river.
Oh, I love it. It's going to be absolutely epic. Are you working a full-time job now as well?
I was for most of the year. I'm actually now part-time. So it's one of the things that I've kind of slightly bold decision that I've taken in order to pursue adventure more. But no, I was working full-time in Oxford at a law firm as well. And it kind of, so that was, it's been a slightly unusual year for me in that I haven't gone off on a really big trip. I've done 2 shorter trips for kind of a week and 10 days. So I've been trying to do lots of small adventures and have an adventurous mindset as well. I think it's so easy to have this idea of adventures being something really big and exciting and really time consuming, but it actually doesn't have to be. It can be the little things that you do in day-to-day life. So walking to and from work instead of getting the bus, that's what I've been doing. Going off on my lunch breaks to sort of explore different kind of green parts of the city or go for a walk along one of the rivers through Oxford. I've been trying loads of new things as well. That's been one of my big sort of adventure goals, because I'm very much a bit of a wuss when it comes to trying new things. I get quite shy and intimidated and think, oh, but everyone else is going to know what they're doing and I'm going to look like an idiot. So I've tried to push myself outside of my comfort zone that way by doing different things. Like I've tried climbing and paddleboarding, ocean rowing, solo bivvy by myself for the first time. Today even I climbed a tree. I'm not sure I've ever actually just like gone and climbed a tree before, but I'm 24 years old and I have just gone and climbed a tree, and it was fun. It was slightly terrifying when I got towards the top and looked down and was like, oh, how do I get down again? But all these little things to make it to make an working full time an adventurous life still.
It definitely always comes down to mindset and how you view life and what you can make an adventure. Because I completely agree. It doesn't have to be these massive, epic challenges. It can actually be doing, like you said, trying climbing for the first time, going for ocean rowing, or, going to climb a tree. It's just trying something new. And especially if it's getting you outside your comfort zone, and it's going to be a good thing, and it could lead to who knows what. We could be speaking now. You might be saying, if we speak again in a few years, might be like, actually, well, when I first had a go ocean rowing, it might be something like, yeah, I've decided to go and row an ocean. You just never know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out.
Never rule it out. So Anna, what advice or tips would you have for other women out there and men who want to sort of get a little bit more adventure in their life, or they want to undertake like a bigger challenge? What would you say?
It breaks into 2 different things depending on how much time you've got and how much of a commitment you want to make. There are so many little things that you can do alongside kind of normal life, in inverted commas. So things that you can do on the weekend, going off and trying wild camping or like bivvying, that is a real adventure, especially if you're not sort of familiar with doing that sort of thing. And it can be quite intimidating at first. Like my first proper wild camping experience was in Arctic Sweden. I'd wild camped once before earlier that year with a friend, and we had no idea what we were doing. And in hindsight, took some pretty poor decisions, such as wild camping on Dartmoor at the beginning of March with summer sleeping bags. So it was a really, really cold night. It was actually the coldest night of the year. It got down to about -8 and we were freezing. So if you're thinking about doing something like that, kind of do research it a little bit, look into what you'll need, but you don't need really, really technical, expensive equipment to do these sorts of things. So I think that can often be something that deters people, as they see, photos of people often like a really fancy tent and they're like, oh, I don't have that fancy tent. Chances are you'll have someone you can borrow a tent off, or, if you've got a sleeping bag, go and get just a cheap one of the plasticky emergency bivvy bags. Things like that work well. So there are so many options of small things you can do. In terms of the big things, you don't be afraid of just leaping and going for it. All of my trips, I've made the decision very quickly to do them. Some of them have taken more research and planning, like the trek in Arctic Sweden definitely took a lot more logistics and sort of physical preparation. But things like walking the 500 miles, I didn't do any physical preparation before I went, and a lot of people who I met along the way hadn't either. I think we all regretted that slightly. But it's there are things out there that you can do that are well supported, and even if it's finding a travel company and doing it that way. Like when I was in Morocco earlier this year, it was sort of an adventure travel company, and that was the first time I've done a package holiday like that. But it was really well priced and it was really well organized, and it meant that I could climb a 4,000 plus meter mountain for the first time. And so it kind of facilitated doing something different when I didn't have the time to be planning a big trip myself. So do also consider doing things like that, and finding a network of people who can support and encourage. Like Facebook groups are absolutely awesome. I've definitely made quite a few cool connections through social media like that, and even Instagram. Actually, one of my really good friends now I met on Instagram a year and a half ago. Still going strong. She wasn't some 50-year-old man, which is always good. So yeah, be open to the different options.
No, love it. And actually some of the Facebook groups, I definitely recommend Love Her Wild, the Tough Girl Tribe. Have you got any other Facebook groups that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Yes Tribe as well. They're quite London and Bristol, I think, are their two main hubs really. But that's another really good network of people who, say yes more to a lot of things, and just do lots of sort of weekend trips and quite spontaneous things as well. And all of the communities, the ones that you just mentioned as well, just full of people who want to encourage and motivate and help inspire people to go and do things, from like little things like your first wild camp through to like the really big adventures. So they're really, really useful communities to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely love it. And where is the best place for people to find out more information about you and the different adventures that you go on?
So I've got my website, which is annablackwell.co.uk. It's got quite a lot of blogs from my trips and things like that. My Instagram is the one that I use the most. I am unashamedly an Instagram addict, and that is just Anna Blackwell. I am on Twitter as well, which is _Anna Blackwell, and Facebook as well, which I'm trying to motivate myself to do more on, is Anna Blackwell Adventures.
Anna, you have been an absolute legend. Thank you so much for coming on Tough Girl Podcast to share more of your amazing challenges that you've done. I have got no doubt that you'll continue to push yourself and go on incredible adventures and continue to inspire other people to go after their own adventures.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. It's been good fun.
Hey Tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Anna. Now, if you are new to the Tough Girl podcast, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. But whether you are new or you've been a regular listener for a long time, I just want to highlight some other guests which may be of interest to you. So please do go check out Sarah Uten, who was the first woman to do London to London via the world. We've also got Belinda Kirk, who is one of the founders of Explorers Connect. Also take a listen to Jackie Hill Murphy, who travels the world following in the footsteps of early female explorers. I'd also recommend taking a listen to Bex Band on the Tough Girl podcast, who is the ordinary adventurer, and Catherine Edsell, who is an expedition leader and adventurer. So there's definitely a wide selection of women that you can go and listen to, who go on adventures, who go exploring the world, all different ages, all different challenges. So just a couple of names for you to go check out: Sarah Uten, Belinda Kirk, Jackie Hill Murphy, Catherine Edsell, and Bex Band for starters. But if you do want more information about the women that I have been speaking to on the Tough Girl podcast, and you want to find out more about these women, then please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com, where you can find all of the show notes and all of the women that I've interviewed. The Tough Girl podcast was started back on the 4th of August 2015. I've now interviewed well over 100 women, so that's over 100 stories of incredible women doing phenomenal challenges all over the world, all ages. It is actually truly exciting when you look back and see what women are doing. They are absolutely smashing it. Now, one of the things that I normally do talk about at the end in this little section, my little spiel, as you like, is about the Tough Girl Tribe. And what I wanted to share is some changes that's going to happen. So the Tough Girl Tribe is a closed Facebook group that I set up to connect the listeners of the Tough Girl podcast, the female listeners of the Tough Girl podcast, giving them a safe place to come together where they can talk about their adventures, their challenges, to get support, encouragement, to ask questions, especially as what I found is sometimes women who have these ideas and they want to head off and travel and explore and do these amazing challenges can sometimes feel quite isolated. They don't necessarily have other people in their friends or family who understand why they want to do what they do. And actually the tribe was created to connect all of these women. What the tribe basically has grown a huge amount since I first started it back in maybe like last year or something. There's now over 1,600 members. And I'm a member of a lot of Facebook groups. And what I start to find with Facebook groups is when they get to a certain size, they start to lose their intimacy. People, or I certainly find it's a lot harder to build those bonds, to build those relationships, to really know what is going on in other people's lives, and for people to get that support that they need. And things can just get lost because there's just too many people. There's pros and there's cons, but what I'm going to do, and I've been thinking about this a lot, I've been discussing it on the Tough Girl Daily podcast as well, is I'm actually going to be shutting the doors to the Tough Girl Tribe on the 31st of December this year. The doors will be shut, and I just want to see what's going to happen. I want to give a chance for the members of the Tough Girl Tribe to really get to know one another. And I'm sorry, I know that many of you may think, oh, I'm excluding people now. And actually, I sort of am, unfortunately. And the doors will be shut if you're not a member on the 31st of December. However, if you do want to become a member of the Tough Girl Tribe and you do want to get involved in this community, then I will after 31st December only be allowing paid patrons to join. So if you become a patron via Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, and you become a regular patron donating $2 or $5 every month, then you will be allowed access to the tribe after the 31st of December. Now, I do understand that some people won't want to pay that, and I totally get it, and that's not a problem, but you have to remember there's so much information out there, there's so much support out there, that it's not me being unfair, because you still get access to the main Facebook page, you still get access to the website, the blog, the books are available. You also have access to Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel. There's so much free content out there, but I am sort of making this pocket a paid group going forward from the 31st of December onwards. If you've got any questions, comments, concerns, please do feel free to get in contact with me, sarah@toughgirlchallenges.com, or you can send me a direct message on my Twitter account or my Facebook. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, but I just wanted to keep you guys updated and in the loop with what is happening. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. I really do appreciate it. Now, you may be thinking, what else can I do to help support Tough Girl challenges? Let me tell you. If you could tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast, that would be fantastic. If you could write a review on iTunes or whatever platform you listen on, that would be amazing, as well as it helps to get the message out there. As always, if you could, I always want to say like, comment and subscribe, but that's for the YouTube channel. And talking of the YouTube channel, new vlogs are being launched every single day in relation to the Appalachian Trail. So from now until about the 11th or 12th of December, there'll be a new video going online. And you'll be able to see the end of my journey and reaching the end of the Appalachian Trail, climbing Mount Katahdin on the 10th of September and completing my summer challenge in 100 days. So walking 2,190 miles in 100 days. Now, if you're listening to this thinking, what is Sarah talking about? I have no idea. Then you definitely need to go check out the website, toughgirlchallenges.com, where you can find out so much more information, because it is absolutely awesome. Anyway, guys, have an awesome day. Whatever you are doing, whatever you are listening to Tough Girl podcast, I do just want to say a massive thank you to everyone for your continued support in helping me to increase the amount of female role models in the media. It is amazing to get these messages out there, to motivate, to inspire, and to encourage other people to go after their dreams, their goals, and their ambitions. And I am fully supportive of you. So just get out there, have some fun, and just go for it. And if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. All right, take care. Lots of love. Bye.